Vedas comprise of the Atharva Veda, and the Rig Veda, and the Sama Veda, the Yajna Veda, and then the Upanishads, 108, and there's different Puranas. So to read all these would take such a long time. And even we don't have these literatures. Some of them are in the original Sanskrit. We'd have to learn Sanskrit. Then we'd have to have the time to read them. Most of us are quite busy. Most of you are working or housewives, etc. So Krishna has given us this Bhagavad Gita instead. Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses, 18 chapters. And if one reads and understands Bhagavad Gita actually, that is enough. One can understand properly all the different truths, all the different spiritual truths. So I'll read one verse from Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 4, text number 9. Janma kama chame divyam evam yovati tatvataha tatvateha puna janma naitimen etiso Arjuna. In English. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains to my eternal abode, O Arjuna. I'll read that again. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains to my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So I'll read a commentary purport by Srila Prabhupada. The one Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally engaged in many, many transcendental forms in relationships with his unalloyed devotees. This Vedic version is confirmed in this verse of the Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculations, attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. Simply by accepting this truth on faith, one can, without a doubt, attain liberation. The Vedic version, Tat Tvamasi, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Krishna to be the Supreme, or who says unto the Lord, you are the Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, is certainly liberated instantly, and consequently his entrance into the transcendental association of the Lord is guaranteed. In other words, such a faithful devotee of the Lord attains perfection, and this is confirmed by the following Vedic statement. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there is no other way to achieve this perfection. That's from the Swatasvata Upanishad. So, this verse describes one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance. Appearance, janma, and activities, karma. That person does not take birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. So, janma karma chame divyam evam yovati tatvataha. The word tatvata means in truth. This word tatvata means in truth. So many people, they know something about Krishna, something about Ram, but they don't understand in truth. This is the problem. They have a partial understanding. It's not a complete understanding. So this is actually a great problem. So this statement says the one who knows properly the nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this body, take birth again. So one has to hear from the right source. In order to understand properly, it is essential that we hear from the right source. So, in order to, who is or what is the right source? Next question. Who is the right source? So the right source is a pure devotee in disciplic succession. That is the right source. A pure devotee in the disciple succession is actually the right source that one should hear from. So we are very fortunate that we are hearing Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, from His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is actually a pure devotee and also authorized, which means he's in disciplic succession. He's a bona fide spiritual master. So those persons who are not hearing from someone who's not bona fide or someone who's unbona fide, unfortunately they will misunderstand. There are many so-called yogis, philosophers, even academic scholars who comment on Bhagavad Gita, who comment on the Vedas. But they're not actually devotees of the Lord. They're not authorized. Therefore, when they speak, simply it increases the confusion. It increases the confusion. Srila Prabhupada was asked one time, why did you present another Bhagavad Gita? How many Bhagavad Gitas are there already in English? About 600 or 700. So why is the need for another Bhagavad Gita? There's already so many. So Prabhupada explained that these other Bhagavad Gitas, unfortunately, they are commented on by unauthorized persons who are not devotees of the Lord. They're commented on people who are not in disciple succession. People who are presenting Krishna as impersonal. People who are presenting Krishna as a fictitious personality. This actually is going on. Fictitious, in other words, made up. I was explaining the other day, in India, when you go, they have these comics. They give even adults read, but mostly children. Amachita comics. Yeah. So they're very nice. You can read them. And there's stories of so many. Hanuman, Ramayana, Mahabharata, everything is there. There's so many titles they have. And they're very popular. And of course it's better to read that type of stuff than generally what Western children will read. But on the inside cover, the publishers, they explain that these stories are accounts of ancient Indian folklore or ancient Indian mythology. In other words, it's Indian mythology. It's folklore. Fairy stories, in other words. And they openly say this on the publishers they printed. Of course, they concede or they agree that by reading these stories, one's morality or ethics will increase, because they teach you to be honest and truthful. But they don't really believe that Ram ever appeared. They don't believe that there was someone who had 10 heads called Ravana. They don't actually believe that there was a personality called Hanuman or Garuda or Krishna. They don't actually believe this. So this is a great misfortune. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada felt he saw the need to present yet another edition of Bhagavad Gita. And this one he called Bhagavad Gita as it is. Yes. So this is what he says. This is in chapter 4, text 2. In the same way, at the present moment also, there are so many editions of the Bhagavad Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to authorized disciplic succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars, but almost all of them do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, although they make a good business on the words of Krishna. This spirit is demoniac, because demons do not believe in God, but simply try to enjoy the property of the Supreme. So Prabhupada is very strongly saying it's demoniac. Very strong. Since there is a great need of an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the Parampara, disciple succession system, an attempt is made herewith to fulfill that great want. Bhagavad Gita, accepted as it is a great boon to humanity. But if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculation, it's simply a waste of time. So generally, this is how Bhagavad Gita is accepted, as a treatise of philosophical speculation. One author put forward in the introduction the idea that Krishna, he is like a doctor, and Arjuna is like the patient. And it's like, you go to a doctor and you get some advice. Someone else, the most favorite conception is that Kuruksetra, Dhamma, Kuruksetra, Dhammakusetra, Kuruksetra. Presents the idea that Kuruksetra is simply the body. Dhamma, Ksetra, Kuruksetra. That Kuruksetra, which is in North India, it's a place. But they present the idea, many swamis, impersonalists, philosophers, actually practically every one of them, present the idea that Kuruksetra is the body. And the 5 Pandavas represent the 5 senses. We have 5 senses for seeing, touch, smell, taste, sound, 5 senses. And the evil sons of Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana and the evil sons, they simply represent all the evil emotions that go on in your mind, like envy and greed and pride and anger. These are all like negative, evil things. And Krishna, he's like the good inside you. So it's a fight against good and bad. So Srila Prabhupada rejects this. He says, no, Kuruksetra is a place in India. You can go there. And Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He existed. He appeared. And Arjuna is his devotee. And this battle that's recorded in the Mahabharata, it actually took place. It really took place. It took place for 18 days. And there were many great warriors there. So it's not imagination. Srila Prabhupada is presenting actually a different understanding of Lord Krishna. So if one hears properly from the right source, a pure devotee in disciple succession, then one's understanding will be different. According to Srila Prabhupada, Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. What does that mean? The original personality of Godhead. Aham Adi Devanam, the source of all devas. Devinam, the source of all devas. He's not just another deva, but he's the source of all devas. Aham savasya prabhavam tattvavam bhavatate. From me everything emanates. In Bhagavatam there's a verse that describes that before this creation only Krishna existed. And when this creation is dissolved, also only Krishna will exist. But in order to run this creation, Krishna also creates what we would call demigods. And many, many demigods, not just a handful, but millions of demigods are in this creation. So the impersonalists would have us believe that actually all these gods are the same, everyone is equal, it doesn't matter who you worship. This is actually commonly preached by even many so-called swamis. I've spent quite a lot of time in India, and I travel around, and I see this in different Indian communities. I was just in England. This misconception is there that it doesn't matter who you worship. You can choose whoever you want. Your Istadevata, it's like your worshipable deity. You can choose whoever you want. This is the general idea. You can choose Ganesh or Lakshmi or Saraswati or Krishna if you want, or Durga or Kali or Chandrika, etc., Ambika, whoever you want. And even now it has been extended further, and the Guru is being put on the same level as God. Now Guru has become God. It never used to be like that, but now Guru has become God. And changing mantras around, like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Everyone knows this mantra. It's very famous. But they change it. They take the word Vasudeva out and they put in the name of the Guru. Isn't it? Did you hear this? Oh, you haven't heard. Oh, I've heard many times. Many, many times. Om Namo Bhagavate Guru Namaha. That's how they do it. They take the name of Vasudeva and they put in the name of their Guru. I don't want to mention names of different organizations, but they do it. So this is a misunderstanding. So one has to hear from the right source. Otherwise one will get very confused. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining that Krishna He appears. He's not even born, he appears. Now we're born and we die, but the Lord appears and disappears. And the example given is the sun. The sun rises in the morning at 6:30, and the sun will disappear very shortly at 7:30. But the sun has not actually gone. It's still there, but you can't see it. When it's dark here in America, if you go to the other side of the world, like I have spent the last 24 years in South Africa preaching. If you go there, which is almost the other side, you'll still see the sun. So Krishna appears and Krishna disappears. There's nothing that's born or dies. We sometimes use that word, the birth of Lord Krishna, but actually he appears and he disappears. And for one who has devotion, for one whose eyes are tinged with the salve of love, Premanjana Chatta Bhakti Vilochena, that person can still see Krishna in front of him, face to face. In the Prabhupada explains in Bhagavad Gita, one can see the Lord face to face. You don't have to imagine. It's not that Krishna is some energy, some formless entity. No, he is a person. He's a spiritual person, but he's a person. Even in the Bible it is said that God made man in his own image. So we can get some little vague idea of the form of the Lord by looking at each other. Because we are created in the image of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna has a form, definitely, but it's a spiritual form. His form is not made of material elements like skin and blood. Our material body, it's only with us for 80 or 90 years, and then we, the soul, we have to leave this body. And we are different to this body. We have two identities. We have a material identity and we have a spiritual identity. So our material identity is that I'm American, I'm a male, I'm an Indian, I'm African, I'm a European, I'm Mexican. This is our material identity. I'm big, I'm fat, I'm small, I'm short. Material identity. And we have a spiritual identity. The spiritual identity is that I'm eternal, spirit, soul. Mami Vamso Jiva Loka, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. I am eternal. And I have nothing really to do with this body. I'm just living in this body for some few short years. But actually, I have nothing to do with this body. Just like a lot of you came in cars. So the car is a dead, inanimate object. It doesn't work by itself. Without the driver, the car is useless. It won't do anything. So this body, without the driver, it's completely useless. It won't go anywhere. It won't do anything. Now, if I ask you what is more important, the car or the driver, and what's the answer? The driver. So what is more important, you or your body? You, the soul, or your body? The soul is more important. But that doesn't mean that we neglect the body. That's not the right idea. We don't neglect that. We're not this body, but it doesn't mean you neglect it. Just like you have a car. Now, if you neglect your car, what's going to happen? It's not going to work. If you don't service it, if you don't put petrol into it, if you don't clean it, if you don't lock it up, what's going to happen? It's going to get stolen or it's going to get trashed out. So you have to look after the car, and the more you look after it, then the more good service you can get out of it. So you look after this body, and the body of your family and children, those people who you're responsible for, those people who are dependent on you. You look after. You give them food, you clean your own body, you exercise it, etc. But the idea is you're not this material body. Your eternal spirit soul. This is the purpose of this human form of life, to realize one's spiritual nature. That I am eternal spirit soul. Sangha yama vyam purusha. Purusha, the soul, Sangha has nothing to do with the body. It's just temporarily living in the body. Another example, like a letter may be in an envelope. So, the envelope is only the outer covering of a letter. So you are within this body. And due to some past activities, you have a healthy body, or maybe you have a little bit sickly body, or you have a brown body, or you have a white body, or you're a male or a female. Due to your past activities, you may be reasonably intelligent, or you may be brilliant, or you may not be very materially, academically intelligent. You may have more practical intelligence. Everyone is a little different. We see this. So this is due to your past activities. But our real identity is that we're spiritual by nature. And this has to be understood. So this is very clearly explained in Bhagavad Gita, that we are eternal spirit soul, and we are servant of the Supreme Soul. And the Supreme Soul is Krishna. His most important expansion is Lord Ram, Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu. So one can worship Lakshmi Narayan, Lord Vishnu, Sita Ram, or Radha Krishna. And as one worships Krishna, Lord Ram, then through the recommended process, which is described again in Bhagavad Gita. What is the recommended process? Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti meaning? Love and devotion. And yoga means to link, connect. From the Latin, from that word came yoke. Yoke is you connect up the bulls or the horses to the trailer. You yoke it. So from that yoga, or rather the word yoke came from the word yoga. So connect up with the Lord. And this is done through devotional service. Devotional service. We are connecting with the Lord through devotional service. So the first step in devotional service. Anyone know what's the first step in devotion to the Lord? Yeah, hearing. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. Hearing, chanting, and remembering. So first thing is to hear. One has to hear. So this is the first step. When we are born, we're born into ignorance, and we don't know we don't know anything. We don't have any knowledge. You don't know how to read. You don't know how to write. You don't know who your parents are. You're in complete ignorance, and we acquire knowledge predominantly through the sense of hearing. Some knowledge, when a young child is born, you'll see a baby puts everything in his mouth. So the first way that the child will acquire knowledge is through taste. Puts everything in the mouth. And then it will start to see its parents. It'll see things. But the way it really acquires knowledge is by hearing. Therefore, hearing is the most important sense. Actually, to hear is the most important sense. So one has to hear from the right source. And knowledge is very important. Nowadays, this is stressed in society. We want our children to go to school, college, etc., and acquire knowledge, qualifications. But this is material knowledge. There's another type of knowledge, and that is spiritual knowledge. So spiritual knowledge must also be cultivated. It's not good just to concentrate only on material knowledge. No, there has to be, spiritual knowledge also has to be there. So Srila Prabhupada in this Hare Krishna movement is presenting genuine spiritual knowledge. And as we hear this genuine spiritual knowledge, then we can make spiritual advancement. We can understand we're not this body, we're the soul. That we are the servants of the Supreme Soul. We can understand the identity of the Supreme Soul, Krishna, as against demigods. And the process for advancing devotional service. As Vaishnavas, or as devotees of the Lord, we do not disrespect anyone. Pandita Samidashana. Vidyavini Sampane, Brahmana Gavihasani, Sunicheva Swapekacha, Pandita Samidashana. One who is educated, Pandit. Pandit means one who has knowledge. Samadashana. Sama means equally disposed to all living entities. He's equal. The verse actually describes that one who is in knowledge, learned Brahmin, he sees equally a Brahmin, a elephant, cow, dog, and a dog eater. He sees equally. He doesn't discriminate on the basis of the body. So we also will offer our respect to all living beings, including the demigods. It's not that we disrespect the demigods. Actually, they're great devotees. And if we disrespect, it's an offense, described in Nectar Devotion by Rupa Goswami. So we respect all the great demigods. Lord Brahma, actually Lord Brahma is one of our spiritual masters, because we are in the Brahma Sampradaya. Actually, we are in the Brahma Sampradaya. Srila Prabhupada is a bona fide spiritual master in the Brahma Sampradaya. So one of our spiritual masters is Lord Brahma. So obviously you have to respect one's guru. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, Vaishnavanamita Sambhu, Rudra, Sambhu, or Lord Shiva is the foremost Vaishnava. He's a great devotee of the Lord. His worshipful Lord is Sankarshan, who's a form of Lord Narayan, or Lord Vishnu. He's a great devotee. So Rudra, Lord Shiva, has his own sampradaya. It's called Rudra Sampradaya. He also has his type of succession. And numerous other demigods also. So we offer respect to them, definitely. But we do not worship them as God. You can offer respect to someone without worshipping them as God. There's no harm. Like if the President of America, if he came to this, our temple here in New Jersey, we would give him some respect. We'd stand up, we'd give him a garland, and we'd give him some kind words, give him some Mahaprasad and preach to him. Give him Bhagavad Gita, some chanting beads, and some tilak. But it doesn't mean we're worshipping him as God. We'll respect him. Just like myself, I'm on a seat that's higher than your seat, isn't it? In other words, I'm looking down at you, and you're looking up at me. And my seat is quite comfortable. It's like foam. It's about 6 inches of foam. And your seat's not so comfortable. And I'm talking, and you're listening. And I've got my water, my pani here. And you don't have your water. So I'm being given respect, but it doesn't mean I'm God. No, I'm a servant of God. So in the same way, we offer respect to the demigods, all of them. Why is someone a demigod in the first place? They're great devotees of Krishna. That's why they get that position. So we have to honor that. But we're not so confused as to think that everyone is God. That is one conglomeration, that everyone is God. And one just chooses as one likes. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Catch a God by the toe. If he hollows, let him go. But actually, this is, as we see all over the world, this is really Hinduism. Hinduism is sort of somewhat degenerated to the condition where persons choose whichever god they want, and even they make them up. You know they make them up? Literally. They do make them up. I was very interested it was about a year ago. I was in India, and it was in Time magazine. It was very perceptive how they printed this article in Time magazine. It was about a very simple man living in South India. I think it was Tamil Nadu. So this man, he was a real simple person, and he had built a temple. And what had happened was that he was the follower of one film star. And the film star, it was a Tamil film star. Later on, he became a politician. Now, I forget his name. But he was a very famous film star, made a lot of films, which is an immediate qualification for becoming God. In India, anyhow. And then he became a politician, which is another qualification. And he actually used to build schools and feed people. So he actually did some good. He was an unusual politician. Most don't do that type of thing. But he was very unusual. He actually helped people. And then he died. So this man, he got his wife's jewelry. This is in Time magazine. He got his wife's jewelry and he sold it. And he had a bicycle and he sold that. And with the money, he made a shrine outside his house. A shrine. Small little shrine like this. And then he made a murti or deity of this film star politician. and he installed it on the altar. And then he would start doing puja every day. He would start doing puja. Coconut, bananas, incense. He would start doing puja every day. Other people would also start doing it, who happened to be walking by on the way to work or something. They would see him do it or something, so they also started to do it. And then what he did was, this politician, he had a wife and he had a mistress. Usual type of program. He had a wife and he had a mistress. So he made two little deities. These were the consorts now. One was the wife and one was the mistress. So it's like every god has his consort. Lakshmi, Narayan, Sita. So these are the two consorts. He put them on either side of the so-called god. Then he wanted to have a flag. It's like Hanuman has his janda. So the man, he was in a political party, so he took the flag of the political party and put it on top of the temple, a little shrine. It's a little flag showing the colors of the political party. But later on, they worshipped him as God. Mahatma Gandhi, ordinary person, but now or shortly he'll become God. And also this person, my film star turned politician, he will also become God. So complete confusion. So there's an example. I was very surprised how they picked that up in Time magazine and printed it. It was quite interesting. So there's an example of someone who's like created a God. Literally created a God. And in South Africa, where I preach quite extensively, so many different gods are being created, with most elaborate names and weird types of worship that they do that probably most of you never even heard of. Very strange types of worship. So this is going on under the name, under the banner of Hinduism. So unfortunately, this is not so good. This is why Hinduism is becoming somewhat, it's losing its potency. It's losing its potency. It's just like milk. If you water milk down, then it loses its quality of being milk. It becomes something else. So if you water something down, if you water a philosophy down, then it becomes something else. So this is actually the problem now. So Srila Prabhupada is trying to present in a very orthodox way original Vedic culture, or if you like, the orthodox Hinduism, the original Vedic culture. And people are beginning to follow and accept all over the world. So this is the potency of Srila Prabhupada. So as we continue to hear from the right source, then our knowledge will increase. So we should continue to hear, which means read, these books by Srila Prabhupada. We should continue to chant. Srila Prabhupada gives instructions to householders. Grihastras. Grihastra means like a householder. So Prabhupada describes 4 things that all of you should do. 4 things. So I'll say the 4 things and then I'll read it. The 4 things are that you should chant every day. Every day you should chant Hare Krishna mantra. That you should offer prasad to the Lord. That you should read from scripture. That's right. You should do some puja. And Prabhupada says if you do these 4 things in your house, then you'll become happy. So I'll read it. It's actually the purport to chapter 13, text number 8. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. So Prabhupada is saying that they are natural objects of affection. Wife, husband, children, these are natural objects of affection. But when they're not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. And Prabhupada explains the 4 things you have to do. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
That's the first thing. Then accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. To accept prasad. Then have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And then engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. Renounced life means you become like a Swami. So, there are examples. Srila Prabhupada spent many years in household life, over 30 years. Dutifully, he raised his children, 4 children. He maintained and protected his wife. He did business. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who is the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, actually had 10 children. 10 children. And he remained at home his whole life. He never took sannyas. One of his children was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So in this age, to live in grihastha life or household life is actually more appropriate. And most of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates were grihasthas, parikas. And even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was in married life for so many years. But one has to do it properly. So, it's described here, 4 things. So if you try to develop these 4 things, then your life can become blissful and perfect, and that of those who depend on you. Depend can mean parents, children. Your dependents their lives can also become perfect. So we have a few minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, if anyone presents themselves as an authority, let us say, on Vedic knowledge. If anyone presents themselves as an authority on Vedic knowledge, then first one should make inquiry as to their qualifications. Just like if you go to a doctor. Now are you going to go for a backdoor doctor, a quack doctor, or one with a whole lot of letters after his name? You're going to go for a qualified doctor, isn't it? You're not going to go for one who has no qualification. So, if you want to hear transcendental knowledge, you have to go to someone who's authorized. Authorized means in disciple succession. There are 4 disciple successions, not 3 or 5 or 6, 4, and 4 only. And preaching out of India, there is only the Brahma Sampradaya. Only the Gaudiya Brahma Sampradaya, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the Brahma Sampradaya. That's the only bona fide one who's actually preaching outside of India. And this Brahma Sampradaya, which Srila Prabhupada is in, and which we are, and which all of you are, because you're following this, it's so important, it's such a special Sampradaya, that even God himself appeared in it. Who is that? Yes. He could have appeared in some other Sampradaya, but he chose not to. So he appeared in the Brahma Sampradaya, which makes the Brahma Sampradaya even more important. So, best is if we can try to hear about Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Vedic knowledge from bona fide devotee in the Brahma Sampradaya. This is the best persons to hear from. Anything else? Mm-hmm.
You mentioned about those who are putting Guru in the place of God. And Krishna says in the 4th chapter, verse 1, verse 10,
Well, one would have to look and see individually and examine. But I remember when Srila Prabhupada came to Bhaktivedanta Manor in London, this building that George Harrison gave. Srila Prabhupada was having a massage, and I was fortunate enough to be in the room. It was either 1973 or 1974. And at that time in England, there was a very famous pseudo-spiritualist referred to as Boy Guru, or Guru Maharaji. He's sort of faded out a bit now. Anyhow, so he printed a magazine, and there was a picture of Guru Maharaji dressed as Krishna with mukut, peacock feather, and flute. And they showed it to Prabhupada. Shouldn't have done that. But they showed it to Prabhupada. Prabhupada became very angry. And he said, "Take them to court." He said, he told Shyama Sundar, that was the GBC, "Take them to court, take them to court." In India, previously, at least in the 1800s, it was actually a criminal offense to claim that you were God if you weren't. It was a criminal offense. Nowadays, there's at least 50 or 100 people claiming to be God. It has become so cheap that if you go to, New York, wherever it is, Times Square, and you stand on a soapbox, and if you say, "I'm God," then probably a few people may even accept it, and they may get out some incense and do some quick arti or something, and you're not going to get locked up. But if you go to Times Square, you stand on a soapbox, and you say, "I'm the President of America," very loudly, then they're really going to think you're crazy, and they'll probably lock you up. So it's more of an offense. If you say you're someone you're not, what is that? It's a criminal offense. You're impersonating someone. You're passing yourself off. It's some type of fraud. But people are doing this. They're claiming to be God and they're not. And ignorant people, naive people, they're so susceptible that they accept it. So it's an unfortunate situation. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining exactly who is God. If someone claims to be God, then you can challenge them. Krishna, he lifted Govardhan Hill on his little finger, on the left hand, for 7 days. Govardhan Hill? It weighs millions of tons. For 7 days and 7 nights, he lifted Govardhan Hill on his little finger. So you can challenge the person. You just try to lift your finger up by itself. For 7 hours. Let's see if you can do that. When Krishna opened his mouth, then within his mouth was the entire creation. Higher planets, lower planets, all the demigods were in the mouth of Lord Krishna. Mother Yasoda looked in and saw. So now you ask this person, now you open your mouth. Let us see what we can see there. So one just has to use a little bit of intelligence. So Srila Prabhupada is giving us this intelligence. You know what is the function of intelligence? Definition of intelligence is the power to analyze things in proper perspective. That's the definition of intelligence according to Bhagavad Gita. The power, ability to analyze things in proper perspective. So someone who's a cheater, he comes and claims he's God. If you have intelligence, you better see it in proper perspective and expose that person. But if you're not very intelligent or gullible, then you get cheated. So that's what we see. That either this material world is a place of the cheaters and the cheated. Very much. It's unfortunate, but it's going on. It's quite amazing actually that, when it comes to material knowledge, people are very well educated. So many fields of material knowledge, psychology, physics, engineering, etc. But when it comes to the science of God, they're very ignorant. They're very naive. They're so naive that they're ready to accept almost anybody who claims to be God. So you can see what an important function the Hare Krishna movement is fulfilling. It's trying to educate people about this most important, essential knowledge of what is our real business in this human form of life, who is God, how do we develop our relationship with Him. This is such important, relevant information. And it's not available at school, it's not available at college, it's not available on TV or in the news media. It's exclusively available, in the books of Srila Prabhupada and from his followers. Any other questions? Yes?
You have mentioned from the Bible, Swami, that God created us in His image. Now, there is material energy also. Krishna is always eternal, just like the soul. So at what point in time did this creation come in? Or was it always existed?
Sorry, the last part of the question? I got the first part.
Material energy is Krishna.
Yes.
And Krishna is eternal.
Yes.
But then you are saying that God created us in His image.
Yes.
His body is material.
Yes.
I presume it is material energy. So
Yes.
it already existed, or at some finite point in time it was created.
Was material energy at some point created? Yeah, we say that material energy is eternal, but it should be qualified. This material nature is eternally created and then dissolved. This creation that we're living on the Earth planet. This is one small planet in the smallest universe. We are actually living in the smallest universe. Dimensions of this universe are given in the 5th canto of Bhagavatam. The circumference and diameter of this universe is given. Because this universe is the smallest, Brahma only has 4 heads. Because he doesn't have so much to think about. In other universes, which are bigger, Lord Brahma has more heads. Now this universe, it was created at a certain point, and it will be dissolved, but again it will be created. So it's eternal, that it's always around, but it's eternally being dissolved and created. Bhutva pralayate. Eternally being created and being dissolved, this creation. And Lord Brahma, who's the predominating demigod, he's the number one demigod in this universe. He lives for 330 trillion years and 40 billion years. Yeah, he lives for a very long time. And his life is contained within one breath of Vishnu. Mahavishnu. It's contained within one breath of Mahavishnu. In other words, Mahavishnu, he breathes out. And from the pores of his body come bubbles, just like from your body comes sweat. So bubbles come from his body. Each bubble is a Brahmanda or a universe. And then this original Mahavishnu expands himself and enters into each universe as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. He lies down in the Garbha ocean. Then from his navel comes a lotus. On that navel, the first living entity in this universe is created. Who is that? Brahma. Not as Darwin said. Darwin presented the idea that the first created being was the simplest, the amoeba. But the Vedic version is the opposite. The most intelligent came first, Lord Brahma. Then Lord Brahma lives for 100 years. Each day, 12 hours, is 4,320,000,000 years. So, he lives for a very long time. Then he dies, creation is dissolved, but then again, creation is created. So that's going on eternally. Then the Lord made man in his own image. Yes, what we see here in this material creation is a perverted reflection of what's going on in the spiritual world. If you look out of the window here, what do you see? Hills, trees, grass, green grass. It looks very pleasant, like a very nice view of nature. So there are descriptions of the Lord's abode in Vrindavan. Sri Vrindavan Dham, the transcendental abode of the Lord. It's full of beautiful trees and rivers, but everything is spiritual, it's not material. Material means it has a beginning and an end. These trees have a beginning and an end. They're going to fall down and collapse. The wildlife, the birds you see, they'll live for a few years. But in the spiritual world, everything is eternal. So this material world is like a perverted reflection. And the example is you go to a river and you see a reflection of a tree. There's a tree growing on the bank and the reflection is in the water. Now when you look at that reflection, you can get some idea of what the real tree is like by looking at the reflection, the shape. But if you try to touch the reflection, what happens? If you go into the water, it looks quite real, and you try to touch the reflection, nothing. So it's actually an illusion, but you can get some idea of what the real tree is like from the reflection. So this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Just like all of you have relationships. You have children, you have wife, husband, you have parents. So all of that goes on in the spiritual world as well. But Krishna is the center. So you have a wonderful relationship as Krishna as your child, and that's Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj. Or Krishna is your friend, the cowhead boys. So everything that's going on in this material world is a reflection, a very dim reflection of what is going on in the spiritual world. We want to have loving relationships, but the people we love in this material world, like our children, they grow up and then they go their own way. Sometimes they embarrass us, isn't it? Sometimes they may die before we die. That's unusual, but it sometimes happens. The so-called loving relationship we have with our wife or husband can sometimes end in divorce. Then what happened to that so-called sweet relationship? Generally when people divorce, they end up disliking each other, isn't it? So we want this loving relationship, but when we repose it or direct it in Krishna, then it's perfect. At the moment we're directing it towards our family and children, etc. But when we direct it towards Krishna, then it's perfect. Because that relationship's eternal, doesn't finish at the time of death. Like in this lifetime, you have a certain family. But what about the family you had in your last life? Where have they gone? You had parents in your last life. Now what's happened to them? You forgot. And the life before that, and the one before that. So eternal relationship is with Krishna. Temporary relationships we get in this material world. So we're not suggesting that one neglects one's duty in one's temporary material relationships with one's parents or children or wife or husband. We don't neglect whatever duty we have to perform, we should perform it. But at the same time, we should understand that our eternal relationship is with Krishna, and this is what will really please us. This is what will really satisfy us. I don't know if that answered. Did that answer something? Thank you. Anything else? Yes?
I have come across one explanation of the Bhagavad Gita as being within yourself and Krishna being the soul and Arjuna being the heart. The heart has a lot of questions and needs to be answered by the soul. What is your opinion?
Well, my first response would be, who is the author? Yeah. And if the author is in the disciplate succession, then I would give it some credibility. But from that statement, you're simply repeating, but from the statement of the author, I can understand that that person is not in the disciplate succession, because whatever anyone says in the disciplate succession is consistent. Like I'm giving a talk, now next week someone else will. We're all members of the Hare Krishna movement. We're all disciples or followers of Srila Prabhupada. What we say is consistent. We are not going to certainly hear something different or new. No. We're like postmen. the postman presents a letter. He doesn't tamper with it. He doesn't change it. If you have a very important message to write to some family member in Bombay, like a matter of life and death, very important, and you write it, and you give it to me to deliver it, but I tamper with that message. I change the content of that message. Then I'm doing you a disservice. My position as a postman is to take the message as it is and deliver it as it is. So bona fide guru takes the instructions of the Lord as given to Arjuna as it is and delivers it as it is, not as it isn't, or with his slight twist, or his angle, or his interpretation. So Krishna very clearly explains in Bhagavad Gita that I am the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, that the living entity is the servant. Then there are different elements like the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So the intelligence is a material element. The soul is situated in the area of the heart. Next to the soul is the super soul. From the super soul, who's actually Lord Vishnu, comes intelligence. So when one understands that, then that type of example would be exposed, and we wouldn't attach too much importance to that. Not only would we not attach too much importance to it, but actually it's a little dangerous to hear speculation. It's actually dangerous. And the example given is that milk is very pure, and sometimes it's called liquid religion. Milk. Sadhus used to live on milk. They still do. Milk has all the properties it can sustain you. Just milk alone, actually. It's a very important product in human society, milk. But when that milk is touched by a serpent, then what happens? Poison. And you don't touch it. Milk is very pure. But when it's touched by the lips of a serpent, then you keep away from it. So Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata, the holy name of the Lord, the Maha Mantra, these things are very powerful. But when they come through the lips of a Mayavadi, impersonalist, then actually it has a detrimental effect. So a Mayavadi is someone who actually derides God. He derides Krishna. There are many Mayavadi Swamis who actually deride Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. They go out of their way to deride him. And it causes not only confusion, but actually like a poisonous effect can come in one's heart. So Srila Prabhupada warned us to actually be careful. It's not sometimes people out of interest or curiosity may hear some other philosophy, but actually it can have a detrimental effect, and one should be careful. All right? Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gau Premanandi.